Welcome back to my channel. I'm doing my go-to daily everyday makeup look, like for work, for going out. I wanted to feature the Too Faced Natural Matte Palette because I know it's an easy buy for a lot of people because the shades are good, it's got cool and warm tones. I hope you enjoy this tutorial. Yeah, keep it real. Alright, so as you've seen before in a lot of my videos, I always start with my eyebrows. For any look, whether it's like barely any makeup or a lot, I always do my brows first. I just like to get them over with, carve them out, be done with it. I use Anastasia Beverly Hills Granite Dip Brow. It's my ride or die for the brows. It's the perfect shade. It shows up cool in photographs, which I really like, but it's also not too dark. It doesn't look like Sharpie or liquid liner. It's basically perfect. I like to use a nice, tight, firm, angled brush, and I just like to trace them out and then use whatever product is left over after I take a big glob of it to trace it out. I use that on my inner corner to kind of feather in hair-like strokes that I can blend out later if they don't look perfect. This is just a nice base that I start with, and then I can just take a whole shit ton of product and use that on the outer portion of my brow. And then I go in and I carve it out using a concealer that's like one shade lighter than my skin. It just, once I'm all said and done, kind of makes a nice reflect highlight on my skin. So I'm using Anastasia Concealer in the shade 0.5, which is one of my favorites in the whole world. It's just a super nice, creamy, full coverage formula. And I just like to use an angled brush and just carve out the bottom first and then blend it downward so that I'm able to blend it into my eyeshadow base. And as you can see, I just get as tightly as I can to that brow line, and it just makes them look nice and sharp. I then put a little bit of whatever's left over on the brush on the inner corner, and I do the same thing on the top as well. Typically, I'll just hold the brush like perpendicular to my skin, and this kind of creates a sharp line on top, and on the bottom it doesn't, which I sort of like because it makes a little bit of a more natural effect on the top of the brow. I also blend this upward, as you can see, just to make sure that I'm able to blend it into my foundation later on. I then take a dense synthetic brush, which you've seen me do before, and I just pat this whole thing out, up and down, making sure that it blends into my skin so that I can, again, blend it into other products later on. And then I put a black mascara over my brows. A tinted brow gel for any other hair color will do just fine, but I'm able to use a black mascara. Next, I'm just priming my face. I'm using the Hourglass Mineral Veil Primer, which I really like for filling up the pores, making the skin look smooth, and also for being a really nice, lasting base for foundation to go onto. I just use my fingers and I swirl it into my skin. You can use a brush. I just feel that if you have clean hands, then it's fine to use your fingers. For foundation, I've been mixing lately the Kat Von D foundation with the MAC Studio Fix Fluid. I'll have what colors I use down below. But this creates, like, the Kat Von D foundation gives a nice full coverage, whereas the MAC foundation shears it out a little bit, adds kind of like the right yellowish tone to it, because the Kat Von D foundation that I use is a little bit too beige, and the MAC foundation smells really good, like rose water. So typically, I don't think it's Studio Fix Fluid, never mind, it's Studio Water Weight Foundation, which is a new really light sheer coverage foundation that came out. I use my beauty blender to blend this in. You have seen this before because I love this little guy. It gives just the most natural finish ever. And I just use this to make sure I'm getting in all the places that I might normally not think of, which is generally down my neck and chin, onto my ears, and into my hairline. And then I go back in and put more coverage in places if I need to. I use the tip of it to get really close to my eyebrow, like you can see me doing here. It looks a little bit funny, but I want to make sure that concealer near my brow is blended out with the same texture that the Beauty Blender is blending the rest of my skin. Whatever excess is left over on the Beauty Blender, I put onto my eyes as an eyeshadow base. And then once my foundation is blended out, before I set it, I go in with cream contour. I'm not going to go into too much depth because I am going to make a really in-depth video on how to do this, but I use the Anastasia Fair Cream Contour Kit. I also use a dense and synthetic angled brush for the face, and I just start carving out my cheekbones, making sure to blend upward and the bottom line is sharper. This kind of creates the effect of higher cheekbones. I also go in and do my nose with a slightly smaller but still dense synthetic brush, and I always just carve it out and then blend both of everything that I contoured out with my Beauty Blender. Basically what I'm going for with this nose is like up on top, I'm just tracing my natural nose line, but I'm making it come down straight, whereas my natural nose comes out really bulbously and I hate it. So as you can see, I'm kind of just like creating a fake nose line here, blending it down to the sides, blending it down in the front, and just like really shearing it out with the Beauty Blender to make sure it looks kind of just like a natural shadow. Nose contouring is pretty much like one of my most go-to things. Like I pretty much have to always contour my nose in some measure. So as you can see, I'm just going over with the Beauty Blender on those edges to make everything look nice and blended in. I also put whatever is left over on this brush in my Cupid's bow to give a little bit of a more pouty effect, and a little bit underneath my lip as well to make the bottom lip look a little bit more full. For highlight, I take one of the light shades from it and I just put this right on top of the cheekbone. I'm basically tracing it back into my temple because that still gives a little bit more of an illusion of a higher cheekbone. I also bring it under my eye to brighten that area. For me, it's important to get that whole area just to make everything look even, otherwise it can look a little bit strange. I also put a little bit on my forehead under my contour, and as you'll see, I put some on my nose and Cupid's bow as well, just to even out all those areas and kind of highlight the triangle of light on my face. And then I go over all that with a Beauty Blender to make sure it's nice and blended out, looks natural, looks like that light is naturally hitting those areas. And then I can go in and set my face with a translucent powder. I basically just pack it on a little bit with a nice fluffy brush, and then I brush it away. I'm actually using baby powder, which I find cools down anything that was too warm in the foundation and just generally keeps my makeup in place all day and smells good. I'm going over and highlighting with Kat Von D's Thunderstruck. I just like to use a big fluffy brush and really make sure it has like a sheer application onto my cheekbones and forehead, and then I use my finger to really concentrate it on my nose to make sure the light reflecting off there looks dank. I put a little bit on my inner corners as well. Now going in with the matte palette, I'm starting with the shade Honey Butter. On a nice fluffy brush, I just start putting this on my outer corner and bringing it into my crease slowly. I want to start by just mapping out my shape and creating that dimension and then blending it upwards so it looks blended into my skin. I use circular motions just on that outer corner, making sure I keep stopping to check the shape, making sure it really just frames my eye and accentuates my natural eye shape. I like to bring it in to give my eyes a little bit of a more sunken look. And I just continue to build the color until I feel it's blended and dark enough. Next, I'm taking Nudie, which is a much cooler brown and slightly darker, on the same brush, and I'm putting it in the same shape, just a little bit more messily slapping it on there. I'm essentially mixing that warm and that cool shade to create a nice neutral brown, exactly like a natural shadow, and again, just framing my eye, making sure I really accentuate that outer corner and that crease. Next, I'm taking Risque, which is a nice dark cool brown. I'm just taking a little bit on a paddle-shaped brush, and I'm just placing this in the main areas I really want to add dimension. For me, that's my outer corner, bringing it slightly into my crease, but not too much, and then I put it on my inner corner as well, usually. I'm pretty much just packing on a tiny bit and moving it around slightly, not worrying too much about blending, because as you can see, I'm going back in with circular motions and that fluffy brush again, and just working on that until it looks blended into my skin and all the colors look blended into each other. I don't want to highlight the lid too much, just slightly in the very center, so I'm taking that color Heaven, and I'm just packing a little bit on the center with my finger. It is a matte shade, so it's just going to really make that eye look like it naturally has all this matte dimension. For the lower lash line, I just take a small fluffy brush, and I'm just taking that shade Nudie first, and I'm really blending this into my eye bag. It's a look that I always go for. I just use back and forth motions on the lower lash line, because generally as a whole you don't need to use circular motions. It's pretty easy. I just like to curl my lashes and then apply mascara. Sometimes I go for falsies, but usually not, because just mascara is obviously a lot more comfortable. I like to mix the MAC Extreme False Lashes mascara and the L'Oreal Carbon Black mascara. And then for my lips, one of my daily go-tos for this look is Kat Von D's Requiem liquid lipstick. It's like a really pale purple color, but it's warm toned, so it doesn't really ash out the lips too much. It does a little bit, which I like. It's a little corpsey, but it's not like costume corpsey. It's like natural corpsey, if that makes sense, with a little bit of girly purple thrown in there. The way I apply this is I just overline the center, and then I connect it down to the natural corner of my lip. And this kind of is obvious, especially with a light lipstick, but in certain light, it looks okay, so that's kind of how I justify that. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching. I would love to see your go-to daily looks, or if you recreate mine, that'd be awesome. Please subscribe, and I'll see you in my next one.